Good morning. Denise Dryden here from Whitefish, Montana, and I'm on Facebook Live inside the Whitefish Study Center, which is the location of my new office where hopefully I'm going to be doing some coaching with parents and kids, and who knows. I'm excited. It's a new adventure for me. So I wanted to talk today about bridging and honoring cultures. Like, what does that really mean, right? And what came up for me is that we're kind of at a precipice where a lot of different cultural beliefs are sort of clashing with each other. And I thought it would be a good idea to sort of play with it for a little while and see what we can discover, right? So when I went to college, I got a degree in history, applied to secondary ed. So I was a high school teacher in Lake Oswego, Oregon. And I taught ninth grade global history, geography for 3 years. And a lot of it was cultural studies. Right? And so what I'd like to do today is sort of set the groundwork for what do we mean by a culture when we're talking about it. So a culture is everything that makes up a person's life, right? It's knowledge, it's attitude, it's behaviors. It's what's shared by a group. It's the way that a group comes together and sort of goes, this is what we all believe in. This is what works for us. This is how we act as a tribe, as a community, as a nation. And this is how we organize ourselves. So it might be about social organization, like it provides structure. So anytime, what we used to do when I was teaching was, we'd look at a region and go, well, what does the geography look like? And what are the barriers? And where are the mountains? And where are the rivers? And what works and what doesn't work? And is this a fishing? Or is this a mining? Or is this a timber? Or is this sheltered? Or is it wide open? And that determines sort of where people settle and what they use for food and shelter. So that's the first part is, this geography, this social organization around the geography of an area. And then there's customs and traditions, like how do you celebrate? How do you do rites of passage? How do you pass things down from one member of the community to the other? Language, sounds, gestures, that provide meaning. We have a common way of communicating. And when I do this, that means, okay, we're good. That's awesome, thumbs up, right? And in our culture, these gestures are accepted as, at common language, right? Religion, how we celebrate faith, what kind of structure we put into faith, education, security and protection. Is this a safe place? Do we need to have walls? Do we need to have fortresses that guard the seafronts? Do we need to have lighthouses out to make sure that fishermen coming in and out don't hit the rocks? So all of these things kind of come into culture. Political and social organization, which we talked about, sort of the politics. How do we lead ourselves? Do we do it collaboratively? Do we do it through a single monarch? Or are we a community-based decision-making, tribe? And then, the one I like the most is the creative expression, is how do we, as a culture, express ourselves? So now you've had the little freshman 101 class on culture. What I wanted to talk about today is that cultures either innovate, which means something new comes in and they explode with a new direction, with a new, like a wheel or a fishing rod or a train track or a power saw, an engine, or in our case, technology. When technology comes in, culture innovates and it changes, right? And then the term that they use is diffusion, which is how is it assimilated in and then diffused into each member of the culture. And I think what we have right now is we have some really diverse cultures here in America that are kind of up against each other and trying to prove who's right, and we're not getting anywhere. So I thought, how do we bridge that? And how do we honor the differences? So when I'm talking about differences in our culture, what I'm really looking at is, we have this silent majority, or silent, what do they call them, the silence, the great generation. And those are the ones that were born in the 1920s, and they went through the Depression. They went through World War II. They had a lot of risk factors in their lives. They survived the Cold War. They survived Korea. They were witnessing and raising their children during Vietnam, during the protests, during the Watts riots in Los Angeles, during all of the civil rights movements, during the assassinations. So these are parents who raised their children during that time, right? And then their children were the baby boomers, and I'm part of the tail end of the baby boomers. And I've said for a long time that generation sort of, the first 10, they're about 20 years long, and the first 10 always match, or pretty much try to match the generation before them, and those in the second part try to match the generation coming in below them. So I consider myself sort of part baby boomer, of course, because I was raised in black and white television and Gunsmoke and Star Trek and all of these early, we didn't even have a color TV when I first was exposed to television. So that just predates me. The baby boomers, and then we have the Generation Xers. And the Generation Xers sort of came at it really hard, and they were the first generation of women who could work. And we've talked about this in other video casts before. And when we have a 50-50 workforce, or an attempt for women to get out in the workforce, we have daycare, we have television, we have babysitting services, we have the overscheduled child, we have a lot of these things. And what I'm going to do is lump these three generations together, because they're all sort of holding on to a role definition that kind of came down in the 1950s and was really rigid, really set us in. And in some of that rigidity was restrictive, like, you know, here's what Emily Post says about manners and the way that we act. Here's the way we can expect employers to act, and here's my role as an employee, and if I put my 30 years in, I get my gold watch. Marriage till death do us part. No matter whether I like you or not, I'm going to stay married to you until death do us part. These are all some very restrictive role systems that were set up in that 1900s to 1950s that are still being carried over generation by generation. Some of us in baby boomers and next generations are honoring those, and some of us are like, nah, we're going to create something different. And when we innovate and we create something different within a family structure, especially extended family, it means that it's an invitation for all of those older family members to either become part of the diffusion and absorb it, or to become part of the resistance. And what I'm noticing is that there's these expectations between grandparents and grandchildren. And when I talk about the millennials, what I want to be able to drive home is that millennials came in with this idea that we are not going to be defined. We're not going to be defined by gender. We're not going to be defined by knowledge or skill. We're not going to be defined by the job we have. We are not going to be defined by the color of our skin. They are a sort of pod community that operates in a small gathering of people that doesn't see differences. And when you have this millennial group interacting with a very rigid role set, it means we need to bridge. It means we need to honor, and we need to go back and forth. So the first thing I would say is that when you're in a familial or a relational experience in work, or especially in your family, especially with your older generations, is that, you know, I'm up at my growth edge. Am I right there? How close am I to something new that's coming my way that's going to just blow my socks off and bring me in a different direction? Do I want to go there? What if I don't want to go there? What do I do? You know, how do I let go of what I know and allow innovation and diffusion to take place? So what am I being asked of right here, right now? Okay. So then the next thing I would say, number 2, is to become curious. What am I being asked to be here? What am I being asked of? What does this person need from me? Why are they interested in that? How do I get to know what they see so that I can see it too? Get curious. If you're not curious and you're just rigid, like, nope, don't want to go there, don't understand that, then we block our growth. And as a culture, as a nation, as a world, we can't grow any further when we're rigid, right? So this bridging becomes really important. The next thing I would say is step into compassion. You have to let go of judgment. You have to let go of expectations. You have to let go of, again, that rigidity. And when we hold compassion in our heart, like, oh, they do things really differently. I don't really like it. I don't understand it. It makes me feel really uncomfortable. It's when you acknowledge that, there's this self-compassion of how I feel, but there's also this compassion of, I wonder how they feel. And I think, the word for compassion is always to be able to have some empathy, to walk in someone else's moccasins is really what the word is. To walk in their shoes and say, I wonder what their life is like. I wonder what it means to them. So the fourth one is ask questions to resolve, which is, what do you think about birthdays? What do you think about holidays? What do you think about college? What do you think about getting a 4.0 in school? What do you think about buying a house? What do you think about marriage? And start to ask really hardcore questions and ask them to resolve, not to fight, but to resolve. Like, help me understand your perspective. And then let me help you understand my perspective. And then we can start to work together. Represent what you really, truly need. So an example would be the difference being, and I'm just going to nail it down on this one right now, with the grandparents versus grandchildren. When we have the Emily post that, on your birthday, I'm going to send you something, and then I'm going to expect a thank you, especially a handwritten one, right? Or a Christmas present, handwritten thank you. And somehow phone calls and texts and pictures of you opening it, they seem to have this hurt feeling like, well, I really wanted a thank you letter. Or I really wanted you to call me and tell me what you thought about it. And so what happens is we get hurts. And then one side goes over here and says, you didn't honor what I did for you. And this side says, I don't understand how to honor it because I thought I did. And you have two sides that are holding on here. So when we say what I really need is a tool I've used with my kids, which is, Mother's Day is really important to me. It's when I celebrate the fact that I have 3 of you, and I want you to call me. You don't have to send me anything. You don't have to take me out. I just want you to call me and check in. And I know it's like this one mark on the calendar, but out of all of the 365 days out of the year, what I want on Mother's Day is a phone call. And I just want to hear your voice. And it just makes me smile inside. And so by being able to say, this is what I want and why, and then for one of my children to be able to say, well, if I'm going to be traveling during that time, can I call you on Monday instead? And I was like, yeah, of course. I just want to connect with you. I just want that one day to sort of represent a time when we can connect. And if we have to move it up or we have to move it back, then I'm being flexible and I'm bridging and I'm not holding on to hurt and resentment, and I'm co-creating something different with my children, right? And then the last piece I would invite you to consider when we're talking about bridging and honoring, like I so honor you and what you're doing here in life, is, or what's more like honor, probably not, but more like this, I honor, is to be transparent. If you're hurt, say you're hurt. If you're mad, say you're mad. If you're excited, say you're excited. If you have a problem to solve, say I have a problem to solve with you. Because when we're transparent and when we can do it without this pent-up back hurt feelings on everything that's going on, then what we do is we hold for something magical to happen. We can co-create a different kind of relationship. We become innovative in our relationships, and we diffuse and we learn to sink in and create something different. So this is what I do as a coach. I work with adults who are trying to run life at the same time in parenting. And I can do that individual, couples, or families. And if you're interested, ask me. If you want to learn more about the perspectives that we've all been cultivating here in the world and what I see as the most important things to address, ask me. I would love to come chat with you or talk to you on the phone or email or whatever. You can find me on DeniseDrydenCoaching.com, and have a wonderful 4th of July week. You take care. Bye-bye.